For most of military history, being seen was the entire point. Bright colors identified your side, projected discipline, and struck fear into the enemy from a distance. Then aerial reconnaissance and long-range rifles made visibility a death sentence, and armies spent the next 100 years engineering the opposite problem: how to disappear in plain sight. This is the complete story of how soldiers went from wearing red coats on purpose to wearing algorithms. Era 1, the Birth of Concealment, World War I. Khaki to Drab. The Boer. War lesson for centuries. European armies wore bright, distinctive uniforms specifically designed for visibility. Red coats, blue tunics, and elaborate braiding meant to project unit cohesion, discipline, and battlefield prestige rather than concealment. The Boer War of 1899 to 1902 changed everything. British soldiers in scarlet coats were catastrophically visible against the South African veldt, and Boer marksmen with modern rifles exploited the contrast at devastating range. By the time WW1 began in 1914, most European armies had transitioned to muted khaki or field gray tones. France remained the notable exception, still fielding soldiers in bright blue coats and red trousers in the war's opening months, a decision that cost thousands of lives before emergency reforms replaced the uniform entirely. French Horizon Blue Uniform, 1915. After suffering catastrophic casualties in 1914, partly attributable to their conspicuous blue and red uniforms, France introduced the Horizon Blue uniform in 1915, a muted gray-blue tone specifically selected to blend with the hazy distances of the European battlefield. The color was chosen through careful study of atmospheric perspective, how objects appear to shift toward blue-gray tones at distance due to light scattering. It represented one of the first instances of a major army applying genuine optical science to uniform design, rather than tradition or unit pride. A shift in philosophy that would define military dress for the following century. German Lozenge Pattern, Buntfarbenanstrich, 1916. Germany applied one of the earliest systematic camouflage patterns to aircraft rather than infantry uniforms. Irregular 4- to 6-sided polygon shapes in muted greens, browns, and blues designed to break up an aircraft's silhouette against both ground observation from below and aerial observation from above. The fabric was produced in pre-printed rolls and applied directly to aircraft wing surfaces, making it one of the first mass-manufactured camouflage textiles in military history. The pattern's geometric abstraction, rather than attempting literal imitation of natural terrain, established a design philosophy, disruptive geometric shapes over realistic mimicry, that continues to influence camouflage design over a century later. French Camoufleur Units, 1915, facing the same visibility crisis that forced the Horizon Blue uniform change, the French Army took the unprecedented step of recruiting professional artists, sculptors, and theatrical set designers into a dedicated military unit called the Section de Camouflage. Painter Lucien Victor Guirand de Sévola led efforts to develop concealment techniques for artillery positions, observation posts, and eventually personal equipment, borrowing directly from theatrical stage design principles used to create convincing illusions for audiences. The word camouflage itself entered common English usage directly from this French military program, derived from French slang meaning to disguise. Era 2, Industrialized Deception, World War II. German Splittertarn, the Splinter Pattern, 1931 to 1945. Developed in the early 1930s and standardized before World War II began, Splittertarn used angular, jagged geometric shapes in green, brown, and tan to break up the human silhouette through sharp, disruptive lines rather than blended organic shapes. It became one of the most widely produced camouflage patterns of the war, issued to Wehrmacht infantry, paratroopers, and various support units. The pattern proved so effective and enduring that Switzerland continued using variants of it until 1955, and the post-war West German Bundeswehr adopted it as their first official camouflage pattern, demonstrating just how far ahead of contemporary Allied efforts German camouflage science had developed. Waffen-SS multiple patterns. The Waffen-SS fielded an unusually large number of distinct camouflage patterns throughout the war, including Platinenmuster, Eichenlaubmuster, and several seasonal variants, nearly all designed by a single individual, Munich art professor Johann Georg Otto Schick. Schick's patterns emphasized organic, leaf-like disruptive shapes intended to blend specifically with European woodland and agricultural terrain across changing seasons, requiring soldiers to carry multiple reversible smocks for different environments. The sheer sophistication and variety of SS camouflage research, conducted specifically for an elite ideological military branch, represents one of the most extensively documented camouflage development programs of the entire war. USM 1942, Frog Skin, the Friendly Fire Problem. The United States developed its first mass-issued camouflage pattern, nicknamed Frog Skin or Duck Hunter for its mottled green and brown organic shapes, intended primarily for Marine Corps use in Pacific jungle warfare. Its deployment in the European theater was deliberately limited and eventually abandoned after American soldiers were repeatedly mistaken for German Waffen-SS troops by fellow Allied forces, whose own camouflage patterns bore an unfortunate visual similarity from a distance. The friendly fire risk this visual confusion created led to the pattern's restriction primarily to Pacific operations, where no such confusion with Axis forces existed for the remainder of the war. British Denison Smock. The brushstroke pattern, 1942, designed specifically for British paratroopers who needed camouflage that would remain effective while jumping through varied terrain and lighting conditions. The Denison Smock featured the distinctive brushstroke pattern, irregular streaks of green and brown applied in a manner deliberately resembling loose paintbrush strokes rather than precise geometric shapes. The smock's design also incorporated practical airborne-specific features, including a long tail that could be secured between the legs to prevent the garment from riding up during a parachute descent. Variations of the brushstroke concept remain in limited specialized use today, over 80 years after its introduction. Soviet Amoeba Pattern, 1938 to 1945. The Soviet Union developed one of the war's most visually distinctive camouflage patterns, featuring irregular blob-like organic shapes that soldiers themselves nicknamed the Amoeba pattern for its resemblance to microscopic organisms. Issued primarily to reconnaissance troops, snipers, and specialized units rather than general infantry due to production limitations, the pattern's soft, rounded, disruptive shapes contrasted sharply with the angular geometric approach favored by German designers of the same period. Soviet camouflage doctrine remained comparatively underdeveloped and inconsistently issued throughout the war compared to German efforts, reflecting broader wartime industrial priorities that favored raw production quantity over specialized textile development. Era 3, Science and Standardization, Cold War. Erdl pattern, designed in 1948, fought in Vietnam, 1966. Developed by the U.S. Army's Engineer Research and Development Laboratory in 1948, the ERDL pattern used mid-brown and grass-green organic shapes with distinctive black branch-like elements on a lime-green background, designed through careful scientific study of how the human eye perceives pattern and depth in natural foliage. Initially shelved and unused for over a decade after development, it was finally revived in 1962 and saw its first significant combat deployment in Vietnam, starting in 1966, becoming particularly favored by U.S. Special Forces and Marine Corps units operating in dense jungle terrain, where its specific foliage-derived design proved genuinely effective. US Woodland M81, 1981. The U.S. Army adopted woodland camouflage in 1981 as a 60% enlarged version of the earlier ERDL pattern, scaled up specifically to remain effective at greater viewing distances than the original jungle-optimized design. By the late 1980s, woodland had become standard issue across every branch of the U.S. military, representing the first time in American military history that a single unified camouflage pattern was adopted universally, rather than being restricted to specific, specialized units. The pattern proved so visually effective and became so culturally associated with American military identity that dozens of other nations subsequently produced their own, directly duplicated or closely derivative versions. 6-color desert pattern. Chocolate chip, 1991, developed specifically for desert warfare and famously deployed during the 1991 Gulf War, the pattern soldiers universally nicknamed chocolate chip for its distinctive small dark brown and black splotches scattered across a tan and pale khaki background became one of the most visually iconic images associated with that conflict in American popular memory. Ironically, post-conflict analysis revealed the pattern was actually less effective than intended in the specific flat, relatively featureless desert terrain where it saw its primary combat use, as the small dark splotches meant to mimic rock shadows proved too widely spaced and inconsistent with the actual visual texture of open desert environments. British DPM, disruptive pattern material. Britain's DPM pattern, developed and refined through multiple iterations beginning in the 1960s, used a 4-color combination of green, brown, black, and sand tones in irregular, blocky, disruptive shapes optimized specifically for temperate woodland and rural European terrain. The pattern proved so internationally influential and widely respected for its effectiveness that dozens of nations, including former British colonies and unrelated foreign militaries, adopted directly licensed or closely imitative versions throughout the following decades, making DPM one of the most widely copied camouflage patterns in modern military history. Era 4. The Digital Revolution, 1996 to present. Canadian CAD-PAT, the first digital pattern, 1996. Canada pioneered an entirely new camouflage design philosophy in 1996, using computer algorithms to generate small pixelated micro-patterns rather than traditional painted or hand-drawn organic and geometric shapes. Research demonstrated that pixelated micro-patterns exploited a genuine quirk of human visual perception, creating effective disruptive camouflage at multiple viewing distances simultaneously in ways traditional large-scale patterns could not replicate. CAD-PAT's revolutionary digital design approach fundamentally changed camouflage development worldwide, establishing pixelation as the dominant camouflage design philosophy for the following 2 decades across numerous allied militaries. U.S. MARPAT, the Marine Corps Digital Pattern, 2001 to 2002, directly inspired by and closely based on Canada's pioneering CAD-PAT research, the U.S. Marine Corps developed and adopted MARPAT in 2001 and 2002, becoming the first branch of the American military to formally embrace digital, pixelated camouflage design. 4 distinct variations were tested during development, with 3 ultimately adopted for official service: MARPAT Woodland, MARPAT Desert, and MARPAT Winter. A unique and celebrated design detail embedded a miniature eagle, globe, and anchor symbol directly within the pattern itself, subtly marking the Marine Corps' distinct ownership of the specific digital design against imitation. U.S. Army, UCP, the billion-dollar failure, 2004. The U.S. Army adopted the Universal Camouflage Pattern in 2004, essentially a recolored gray-tan-green variant of the Marine Corps' MARPAT design, specifically intended to create one single universal combat uniform, effective across all environments, and eliminate the logistical burden of issuing separate specialized patterns for different terrain types. The pattern subsequently proved to be one of the most widely criticized camouflage failures in modern military history, performing demonstrably poorly across virtually every real-world environment it was actually tested in. The Army eventually acknowledged spending well over $5 billion developing, producing, and distributing a uniform that provided measurably worse concealment than the pattern it had specifically replaced. Multicam. Crye Precision's universal solution, developed by private defense contractor Crye Precision specifically to solve the exact universal effectiveness problem that UCP had catastrophically failed to achieve. Multicam used a sophisticated 7-color palette with soft, blended organic transitions between colors rather than sharp geometric or pixelated boundaries. Special Operations Forces adopted Multicam informally and enthusiastically years before official conventional military adoption. Driven by their own operational experience and effectiveness testing rather than top-down institutional procurement decisions. Its eventual widespread official adoption represented a rare and notable instance of grassroots operational feedback from elite units directly overriding official standardized military procurement processes. US OCP, replacing UCP 2015, formally replacing the widely discredited UCP starting in 2015, the U.S. Army's operational camouflage pattern was directly based on the already proven multicam design, with only minor proprietary modifications made specifically to satisfy government-owned intellectual property requirements. The formal replacement effectively represented an official military acknowledgement that Special Operations Forces, who had already unofficially adopted multicam years earlier through informal channels, had made the demonstrably correct camouflage choice long before official Army leadership caught up and formally recognized it. Russian Digital Flora, EMR, Russia's modern EMR pattern, commonly called Digital Flora, employs small pixelated micro-shapes in green, brown, and black, following the broader international digital camouflage design trend pioneered by Canada in the 1990s. Extensively documented and closely analyzed during the ongoing war in Ukraine, Russian camouflage effectiveness has varied dramatically and unpredictably across different units, revealing significant inconsistencies in fabric quality, print accuracy, and manufacturing standards that closely mirror the broader documented logistics and production challenges affecting Russian forces throughout the conflict. German Bundeswehr Flecktarn. Germany's modern Flecktarn pattern uses irregular blotchy organic shapes across 5 distinct colors, representing a direct conceptual descendant of the multi-pattern Waffen-SS camouflage research conducted decades earlier during WW2, though completely redesigned with no direct visual resemblance to specifically avoid any association with that historical legacy. Flecktarn remains among the most internationally respected and widely imitated camouflage patterns currently in active service, considered particularly effective across the specific temperate European woodland and agricultural terrain the German military has historically operated within throughout its modern history. Israeli IDF, the uniform that resisted camouflage. Uniquely among major modern militaries, the Israeli Defense Forces maintained plain olive drab uniforms without any camouflage pattern whatsoever for the majority of the country's military history, reflecting both budget constraints and a specific doctrinal emphasis on rapid offensive mobility over static defensive concealment. Israel only began transitioning toward digital camouflage patterns relatively recently, driven directly by documented operational experience in urban and complex terrain environments during conflicts in Gaza and Lebanon, representing one of the last major modern militaries to fully embrace pattern camouflage as standard combat equipment.